Hi everybody, it's Mara Keisling again from the National Center for Transgender Equality. I'm here at the Supreme Court with my colleagues Harper Tobin, Jillian Branstetter, and Jay Wu. We're here to talk about the decisions that just came down this morning from the Supreme Court in the Masterpiece Cake case. Harper Jean, as you know, is our policy director and is our expert on this. So I'm going to ask Harper Jean some questions, if that's okay, and we'll let people know what's what. Because I've been reading a lot on Facebook and Twitter in the last hour, and people seem to be reacting differently. There's some people who think this was a catastrophic loss, and there's a lot of reaction to be done. Other people who think it was a loss, but we're moving forward, and I don't think I've heard anybody say it's a win. So what do you think? What's going on?
Well, there are two things that are important to know about this ruling. One is that it was a very narrow ruling by the Supreme Court. In fact, the court came about as close as it could have to not really deciding anything at all as far as the underlying legal question, which was, is there a constitutional right for businesses to discriminate against LGBT people when they're serving the public at large? And the court kind of punted on that issue here. Right? It ruled that in this specific case with this specific baker in Colorado, that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission didn't handle this case in an appropriate way, and so their ruling that the baker couldn't discriminate had to be reversed. But the court didn't really answer those broader questions. What it definitely did not establish or grant a broad right to discriminate against LGBT people or anybody else. This ruling does not, for example, mean that healthcare providers can start turning away transgender people. It doesn't even mean that bakers can start turning away trans people or LGBT folks. It really came down to this state commission and this baker in this one case.
And that's what you mean by narrow, right?
Yes, that's what I mean by narrow. But the other thing is, by punting on this issue, by ruling very narrowly for this one baker in Colorado, the court's ruling is, we know already, it's going to be ruthlessly exploited by people who are seeking to discriminate and to promote discrimination against LGBT people in our daily lives. And that's, every place from, bakeries to where we get our health care. It is not legal to discriminate against trans people, in this country. But, today's ruling doesn't change that. But because it ruled narrowly for the baker in this case, it's going to be exploited, by those people who are fighting against equality. So we got to continue the fight just as we have been. We are going to have to fight, as we always do on several fronts, and one of them being around this attempt to use to refuse services to LGBT people. So that fight continues.
Well, and maybe it heats up a little bit. I've said that the folks who were against marriage equality, who soundly lost in the Supreme Court, they weren't going to let it go. And now what they're signaling is they're going to do the same money-raising tactics, the same minor skirmish tactics that they've done on reproductive rights, where they come after little things all over the country, lots of different times. And so I think we have to hunker down and get ready to fight that. I also just want to note, so some people I think were surprised that there was a 7-2 decision.
Yeah.
In fact, when I wrote today that it was narrow, somebody on Facebook wrote, that's not narrow, it was 7-2, but that's not what we mean by narrow. But what do you think about the 7-2 decision? Was that a surprise for you?
Yes and no. I mean, the grounds of the ruling were very narrow. They were about this one baker and this one state commission in Colorado and how it handled this case. And so it left really for another day this question of our state and our federal non-discrimination laws and these attempts to refuse services to people based on who they are. So the court's opinion itself is narrow, but you can see that there were definitely those on the court who were very ready to establish a sweeping right to discriminate, and chief among them was the new Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch, appointed by President Trump. And if President Trump is allowed to pack the courts with people like Gorsuch who believe in a right to discriminate against LGBT people in so many aspects of our daily lives, that is dire for this continuing fight over our dignity and our ability to just participate in daily life.
Right.
If you read Gorsuch's opinion in this case, if he has his way, there is this sweeping right to discriminate that the court today did not grant. And it makes it more important than ever. Yes, it makes it more important than ever to protect our rights and protect our courts from anti-LGBT nominees in front of the Senate. So that's going to be one of the many fronts that we're going to have to continue fighting on, and just as Gorsuch's opinion today really illustrates just how bad this could get if the courts are taken over by Trump appointees.
Right. Is there anything else we think we need to cover here? NCTE's on this. We're working with the legal groups. Mm-hmm. We're going to maintain our vigilance. We know we're now in the long haul. We're in for a long fight. I'm confident we're still winning. This is a setback, but
the most important thing for people to know is that our federal and state civil rights laws in this country, many of our state laws and our federal laws protect transgender people from discrimination in many areas of our daily lives, healthcare, employment, and others, and that isn't changed by this decision. It underscores the fights that we have ahead of us. Some of those fights are gonna heat up, like you said, but it's important for people to know that the fact that the Baker won in this case does not mean there's a right to discriminate against us. It doesn't mean that we lost our rights, and we have to keep asserting them every day. That's how we're gonna get to equality.
And you know what else we have to do? We have to vote. A lot of what's happening here, if you read Judge Gorsuch's concurrence, mm-hmm. Right, yes. You can see it really mattered who was elected president this time. And we have to vote. We have to vote this year. We have to vote in 2020. Right now, President Trump has appointed about 1/8 of all of the federal judges already. They're putting them on at a clip that we've never seen before, and they are picking people who are exhibiting anti-LGBT and anti-trans bias. That is not a flaw, that is a feature in what they're looking for. They're putting in absolutely unqualified people as long as they're willing to hate us. We need to vote, we need to win so that we can have some control over who gets appointed judges, and we get back to a time where people were appointing judges according to their qualifications. Harper Jean, anything else you want to say?
Just that I have been out of the office for 5 weeks. I am really excited to be back in this struggle for equality with the NCTE team and all of you.
Yep. Harper Jean's been on sabbatical for a while, and today was her first day back, and she jumped right into the fire. So I really appreciate that. We all do. And thank you guys. Thanks, everybody.
Hang in there.